All right, everybody, and welcome back to the Telivy MSP podcast. Very excited to introduce our guest here today. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, my name's Erick Simpson. I'm a recovering MSP these days, Jeremy. I launched one of the first MSPs in the industry in the early 2000s, sold it a few years later, and have been working with MSPs and vendors ever since to help, improve the MSP ecosystem.
Very cool. And on this podcast today, I want to dive into both your experience as an MSP and also helping those MSPs. Love to understand what that is. So, real quick introduction for me. Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremy, head of partnerships at Telivy, and we're an automated cybersecurity risk assessments platform for over 100 MSPs. MSPs like Halt Data Solutions, Triada Networks, and Level 5 Management love Telivy because MSPs use Telivy to run automated risk assessments to win new clients, provide quarterly reports to existing clients, help clients meet compliance, and reduce risk assessments that take 7 to 8 days manually to under 5 hours with Telivy. All right, let's jump right into it. Eric, could you tell us about how you help MSPs?
Sure. Today, I coach and consult with MSPs to help improve their business efficiencies, profitability, and the value of their businesses. And this has been my experience launching my own MSP practice, and then after selling that practice, launching MSP University, where me and my team helped about 30,000 IT providers over about 9 or 10 years to really transition into the managed IT services business model.
Hmm. So to clarify, Eric, do you mean helping IT business owners, transition from a break fix model to an MSP model?
Correct, Jeremy. Back before managed services was managed services, we had an IT practice. I launched it in 1997. This was after spending a few years in the enterprise building out call centers and service desks for Fortune
Hmm.
1000 organizations. So decided, like many of us, that, you know what, I think I can do this better than, the folks I'm working for. So I decided to start an IT practice. And boy, the school of hard knocks hit pretty fast. We were like every other early IT provider back then. We were doing time and materials based services. We were delivering projects to clients basically in Southern California, where I'm where I'm based. And around about 2004, 2005-ish. So we launched in 97. So we had a pretty long run as kind of your typical IT provider. We started looking at ways to do more with less, to increase our efficiencies, to increase our profitability. And we knew, Jeremy, at that time, that if we wanted to hit our revenue goals, we would have to hire like 20 technicians and engineers and
Hmm.
grow a company based upon the prevailing service methodology back then, which was kind of a dollar for an hour of labor kind of thing. And we that wasn't appetizing to us, so we thought, well, what can we do differently? And this is when we started coming up with the idea of flat rate IT. We didn't call it managed services. We didn't know what that was yet, but we said, hey, flat rate IT services. Can we flat rate this and deliver a series of services that can be measured for a flat fee per month, and then allow us to scale our staff that way? Because obviously some clients need more support, some clients need less support. So we were trying to figure that out, and that's what we went to market with around 2005-ish, and
Hmm.
made a bunch of mistakes along the way, and then figured it out and became very successful at it, and started garnering the attention of vendors and other IT providers, especially vendors whose solutions we were using, like our RMM tool and our PSA solution. Vendors were asking us, what are you guys doing differently than all of our other partners? And we didn't know what they were talking about. And they said, you guys are landing these agents like nobody we've ever
Hmm.
seen. You're growing so fast. And so when we started to share our methodology, that's when I think things started really clicking in these vendors' mind to say, well, hey, can you train our partners to do that? And that's kind of what got the snowball rolling. So then we started doing training for vendors. I spoke at pretty much every conference that was out at the time, and then really began building this process around how to improve, financial performance, marketing, sales, service delivery, project management, all the things that we
Wow.
had documented in our practice is basically what we then converted into a training program and then started training tens of thousands of MSPs over time with.
Could you break down for me? You mentioned that when you switched to this flat rate, and I imagine flat rate came from like, every month or so you get a flat rate fee, and you almost like work as an employee, right? Like as part of a department of that company.
Mhm.
And I'm curious. You mentioned that when you changed to that managed service model, that you were getting more clients. Um, what do you think caused that, right? From a break fix model to a managed service model. What in that model gave you the ability to win more clients?
Well, Jeremy, I'll say this. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because there was no one else doing this at the
Mm.
time. So if you think about it, this was completely new, even to our existing clients. So we had to come up with not only a portfolio of services and kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard, like how should we price it? Should we price it by PC?
Mm.
Should we do? So we were going through all of that internally, but we decided that our approach would be to segment our existing customer base into kind of our A clients, our B clients, and then our C customers, let's say, right? So we had a pretty good idea who we thought our A clients were. I mean, the typical things that you think of. You've got a great relationship. They trust you. They listen to you. They pay on time. All these other things. Do we want to have would we like to have a beer with them? Do we like these clients? So we figured we'd had a pretty good shot at converting our A clients. Our B clients we weren't quite so sure, and then our C customers we didn't have a high you know a high expectation of converting a lot of those. We had about 220 or so total customers that we were billing kind of on a regular basis. I'd say something quarterly or biannually or something. They were consuming our services. So the A clients that we went after first, we basically asked them to trust us because
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, Eric, look, we like you guys, we trust you. We don't really understand everything you're seeing here, but let's give it a try, right? So we converted all the A's, and then when we went after the B's, we discovered an interesting thing, Jeremy. We discovered that not only were there some A clients in that B segment in there
Mm.
in disguise, that we hadn't realized it because we hadn't been spending time with them to develop them into that A, client qualifier. And then we also discovered that, oh boy, there are some C customers that we thought were B clients in here as well. So we converted, I'd say, more than half of the Bs, but then the rest were the C customers that basically we approached them and none of them were having it. They were firmly, satisfied with, if it breaks, then we call you and you come fix it and come fix it now and make it cheap, right? So we had these C customers that over time we exited. So
Mm-hmm.
over that 220 or so customer base that we started with
Wow.
over the next 9 months, we ended up with about just shy of 70 flat rate IT clients. And one thing that really surprised us, Jeremy, that I did not expect, well, a couple things. Number one, of course, our technicians were much happier, right? The morale in the company just shot up because now we're going after these types of clients, and this is how we're going to sell our services, and we can scale. And now we were actually generating more positive revenue. I was worried about exiting
Mm.
a bunch of C customers because we were generating about 50 to 60K in reactive break fix revenue every month. And I was loath to see that money go away. But the most surprising thing was that once we completely exited the C customers, we're only dealing with, I'll call them managed service clients now.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually more profitable, believe it or not, because we weren't dealing with clients that wouldn't pay us or slow pay us or were
Mm.
negotiating on the invoices all the time or just noisy and bad fits for our organization. So it was a pretty interesting business educational learning curve as we went through this. We learned a lot of things about just general, best business practices and who you should bring on as a client and who you should never bring on as a client. I mean, always, you know, uh, you know, uh, hindsight is 50-50, right? So we learned a lot through that transition.
Absolutely. And I think That's a great lesson to learn, in that situation, right? Like for break fix businesses who may currently be break fix and maybe on the edge of, pivoting to a managed service model, I'm sure everybody has that same, equation, right? Oh, do I give up, right, this security, this stability, and take the risk to switch to this model, lose some customers? Like that thought is so scary for a business owner, right? Like why I've worked so hard to gain these customers. You mentioned MSP. Was it university or academy?
MSP University.
University. How could you tell me a little bit more about that, and also how that intersects with Channel Mastered as well?
Sure. Once we really hit our stride with the MSP practice at that point, we gained some notoriety in the channel, in the industry, because we were very open and transparent and giving in terms of knowledge. So, hey, the rising tide lifts all, ships. So
Yeah, yeah.
we were very visible and were basically training IT providers to become MSPs ourselves directly, and then we were being engaged by vendors to help train their channels as well.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so around about 2007, we had been getting offers to to buy the MSP practice. You know, Not quite as like we're seeing M&A today, which is kind of crazy. The M&A activity that's going on in the MSP industry today, which we also help our clients with. So we've done over probably 4 dozen or so M&A engagements on both the buy and sell side, helping partners either sell their companies or helping them grow through acquisition. And this is all because we've been working with these partners since the early 2000s. So we've watched them grow their businesses to the point where now they're in a position to reap the benefits of all that hard work. And maybe they have another interest, or to do something different, or maybe retire, or take some time off, or take some risk off the table, and just, hey, I just want to come in and do this one role. And so that's really exciting too, to watch the industry mature over time. But what ended up happening was we decided to go ahead and sell the company at the end of 2007. And around about 2006 timeframe, we had launched MSP University as kind of a pilot to test the waters, to see what the appetite was in the market for an organization that could come in and actually work with partners and work with vendors to grow this the MSP model. And it was wildly successful. And it was a subscription model, so we learned along the way that we could create programs for MSPs that they could subscribe to based upon what their need was or their budget, and then prioritize working on different aspects of their business over time for improvement. And so after we completely sold the practice, we focused 100% on growing MSP University. And over the next 8 or 9 years or so, we conducted hundreds of workshops, boot camps, webinars all over the world. And these were 2 and 3 day live events. We were actually, a big event in the channel, because nobody was doing it quite like we were doing it. We would bring vendors in that would sponsor, but the edict was they could not sell. They had to teach,
Mm,
train, right? So we were
interesting.
bringing in all the brightest minds from all our vendor relationships to come in, and we had different tracks. We had, an operations track, we had a leadership track, we had a marketing track, a service track, different things like that we would, just conduct over 2 or 3 days. And we called it boot camp because it was grueling, Jeremy. I mean, we started early and we finished late, and we delivered such value to to our attendees and to our vendor sponsors, that we're kind of recognized as, being part of the tip of the spear of helping
Mm-hmm.
grow the MSP movement over time. And today, I've transitioned out of some of those business interests. We've launched Channel Mastered now, which is all about helping vendors either improve their existing channel strategy, or maybe they're curious about entering the MSP market. So maybe they're not yet in the channel and are interested in it, to explore what the value proposition is. So we work with them. We do a lot of market analysis. We do surveys, we build channel programs, we improve channel programs, we help vendors recruit MSPs through live events and webinars and things like that, and digital marketing. We write tons of content, white papers, case studies, state of the industry reports,
Wow.
just about everything a vendor would need to succeed in the channel. And then we also enable not only their channel partners to go to market and sell together as a team with their internal sales teams and account managers, but we also help recruit, train, and coach vendors' internal account management teams because, hey, we've been on both sides of the fence. So we understand the challenges and the opportunities from both the MSP partners position and also the vendor and distributor position. So we do that for vendors at Channel Mastered, and then at MSP Mastered is where we continue to deliver coaching and consulting and training and lots of online master classes and the largest archive of assets that can be downloaded by MSPs to help their businesses. I'm talking about agreements, SOWs, project management forms, marketing tools, you name it, hiring and HR employment ads from top to bottom, calculators for pricing, proposal templates.
Everything they would need.
Yeah, we find ourselves in a very unique position where, through, the last 10, 15 years, we've amassed, all of this institutional knowledge that we can now turn around and help, our clients, whether they be MSPs or they be vendors or distributors in the channel.
I'm curious, could you give us an example of, say, you're teaching an MSP a sales process? Let's say they're a technical business owner. What is sort of your sales process that you would teach and coach MSPs?
I'm glad you qualified that, Jeremy, as being a technical business owner, right? Because we know that there are a couple things that MSPs are great at, and again, as a recovering MSP, I can tag in and kind of fess up about me and my brethren, but we're really great at solving problems. We're great
Yeah.
at building technology solutions. We're great at gaining trust with our clients and things like that. A
Mm-hmm.
couple of things that we struggle with, you mentioned one is sales, the other one's marketing, right? So these are disciplines that kind of fall outside of our wheelhouse. So when we go in and talk about selling to end user customers from an MSP perspective, not from a kind of a reseller perspective, or there's a telecom channels, there's print copier folks, and those are more kind of solution focused, point product focused, transactional sales. I'm talking about building a relationship with an end user client as an MSP where we are going to own the responsibility of managing their infrastructure. We're going to deliver cybersecurity and enhance cybersecurity processes to strengthen their cybersecurity posture. And basically, we're acting as their outsourced IT department, maybe their virtual CIO or CTO, and we're
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling that role. So that is a very consultative sales process. And so what we've done is we've taken probably 4 or 5 of the most well-recognized sales processes. I mean, and sales is sales. I mean, you've got all these different methodologies from all these sales gurus, right? But at the end of the day, they're changing a little bit something here and calling it this, and maybe it's a different phase here, but it's all the same thing. What we need to do is we need to build interest and curiosity in our prospect. We need to increase their buying temperature. We need to impress upon them the implications of them not taking action, thereby increasing sense of urgency, accelerating sales velocity. And then we need to present a solution after we've qualified them for pain and need and budget, which is probably the biggest mistake I see partners making today, is failing to qualify properly for budget and then coming in with a proposal that gives the buyer sticker shock, right? So once we qualify that, we scope a solution within that budget,
A
and then
quick follow-up question on that.
yeah,
How do they qualify budget? And just to make sure I understand, so when you say qualify
yeah.
budget, it means the MSP understanding or maybe even asking questions to understand where that client is at in terms of budget. Maybe they have too little budget, right? So it's not a fit. Or maybe they do have budget, or maybe it's not as much as you might think. Is
Mhm.
that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you're right on point, Jeremy. So, and I'll circle back and we'll talk about that
Okay.
because it is very, very important. And then the so they're So they fail to qualify on budget, and then they fail to properly ask for the business. So there's kind of an awkwardness around sales for someone that hasn't done sales, or they'll do it kind of the accidental salesperson. And sometimes it is the technology business owner themselves that has to go out and sell. And they've, and this is where we find opportunities to assist with bundling
Mm-hmm.
and pricing, because a lot of, if you don't really understand sales, you don't understand your cost of service delivery, you don't understand how to apply markup or margin properly to meet your targets, then you're constantly kind of chasing new revenue all the time, and it really hampers the ability for the organization to grow profitably, to afford to pay its existing team, to keep them, and then to be competitive when we're hiring. And we all know about how challenging it is right now to hire
Yeah.
technicians and the tech shortage and all that. But I'll circle back and answer your question about qualifying for budget. And it's a very interesting a challenge, because when you
Yes.
break down what we're doing in the 7-step sales process, let me just list the 7 steps. The first step is prospecting and preparation. We're identifying who our target audience is. We're prospecting. We're trying to set an appointment. The second step, during the first meeting, we're going to do a couple of steps in the first meeting, and that is the warm up, where we get the client to relax, right? We find areas of interest, which now social media is such a help in the sales process, because if they're like everybody else, I mean, we can get an idea of their background, maybe their education, maybe the things that they like to do. It depends on how prominent they are on social media, but we get an idea of their business and what they're doing. So we can ask them questions that allow them to speak 80% of the time while we listen. Hey, how'd you get into this business? I saw on your social media that you took a recent vacation. Tell me about that, right? So you're getting them to
Mm.
relax and open up, right? You're trying to build that connection. And I know for a lot of technically minded business owners or technically minded salespeople, this is the hardest part: is we have to adapt our behavior to be more of that people person. There are two types of buyers, Jeremy. You mentioned, there's the um, kind of the data driven buyer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I need facts, figures, I want case studies, I want white papers. I don't trust you until I can verify that you are trustworthy through these other means. I'm not just going to believe you. And for those types of buyers, the technical salesperson does very, very well, because
Yeah.
we can talk about all that stuff. They've got the white papers, you've got the documentation, and all that. But when you're dealing with a people person buyer, this is the complete opposite behavior. They're not really worried about the data. What they're interested in is, do they like you first, right? So if they like you, then they probably won't need a lot of that extra support documentation, but you should always have it
Wow.
at hand anyway, because you never know who they're going to talk to within the organization that needs that kind of stuff. So the first thing you do in that meeting, where you're warming up that client, you're trying to determine what kind of a buyer are they. Are they the person that's very talkative and uses their hands a lot, like I'm doing right now, and are very engaging, and that's the people buyer. So our job now is to adjust our behavior and our approach to cater to that behavior, to align with it. Now, if they are the opposite, if they're not answering your, the one word answers to your questions, they want data, that's when we have to the mistake there is to try to be the people person salesperson at that point, because it's a mismatch, right? And it's kind of like, I'm an engineer by trade, right? So I'll lose consciousness after a while if somebody just keeps talking, right? So I want to get to the point. I got stuff to do. I want to get
Yep.
moving forward. So it's our job in that sales conversation to understand who the buyer is, how they behave, and to address it. If they need data, facts, figures, I'm going to deliver it to them so they can make a quick decision. If they need, or a people person buyer, I'm going to bro it up with them a little bit, right? I'm going to get them to relax. I'm going to tell a few jokes. We're going to find areas of interest, and then we move on to the next step, which is qualifying. So the first meeting, the warm up, get them to relax. However we do that, then it's qualifying, and in the qualifying stage is where we ask a series of different types of questions, right? There are status and diagnostic questions, which really are kind of single sentence questions that reveal you as the expert in the conversation. So let's say that we're qualifying for cybersecurity, right? I will ask a question to you, Jeremy, like, hey, Jeremy, what are your highest risk platforms that you run your company on today, right? how do you protect that data? Where is the data stored? Right? I'm asking very specific questions about a topic that I'm a subject matter expert in, so that you think, oh wow, Erick's asking the right questions. He knows what he's
Yeah.
doing.
Or I
Right?
might say, I don't know.
I don't know,
You
right?
tell me. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's when that opens the door up for us to do an assessment then. Hey, well, let's figure it out together. What for clients in your position, what we tend to recommend is an assessment to let you know what your status is right now and where the gaps are and how we can help, right? So we're qualifying, we're using status and diagnostic questions to reflect our expertise and build trust and confidence. And then we're using um, implication questions. And these are the questions that build that sense of urgency. Hey, Jeremy, you don't know, right? How do you feel about the risk that you may be under right now, right? I'm trying to inject urgency. I'm trying to inject concern and worry right now, right? Not in a bad way, but I want you to take action, right? Because I
So
can't help you if you don't let me help.
what's your plan when you do get a breach? Not if, but when, right?
Right. I mean, how bad? What's the and the idea of an implication question is to get the buyer to consider the absolute worst thing that could happen if they don't take action. So, hey, Jeremy, what would happen if your business was breached or you had a ransomware attack and weren't able to access your customers' data? Or these threat actors decided that they're going to release all your company and customer data on the internet. How would you deal with that? What's the worst thing that could happen? Are you aware of reporting regulations in your state or whatever for breaches and things like that? So
Mm.
I'm building that concern a little bit to say, and then I'm going to let the pressure off a little bit. I'm going to say, hey, Jeremy, don't worry, right? This is what we do. Here's our plan. We're going to come in, we're going to do an assessment, with your authorization, we're going to deliver our findings, and then we'll put together a plan so that you can sleep better at night knowing that we've strengthened your cybersecurity posture, right? So that all happens in that first meeting. And then the most important question that is failed to be asked in many sales situations when we may have a new salesperson or someone that just doesn't, it's not their full-time job to sell and close opportunities, or maybe they're not compensated to close opportunities. Sometimes we get excited and come back to the office and go, oh yeah, they were so excited. Okay, well, what are we going to propose? We're going to propose this. And what are we going to quote them? We're going to quote this. And if we didn't ask for the budget range, that could backfire on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what
Mm-hmm.
what I found is the reason that folks don't ask the budget question is simply because they haven't found a comfortable way to ask the question. And what I always say when we're training sales teams, Jeremy, is it's just another question. If you think about it, it's just another question. And I give them different, like 5 or 6 or 8 different examples of how to ask the question. So
Mm-hmm.
one way could be, hey, how will an engagement between us get funded? That's the question. That's it.
Wow.
There's no fear. There's no like if you build it up in your mind, and this is what when we train sales teams, it's like, don't build it up in your mind that, if the client sees you struggling to ask a question, they're going to start asking questions themselves about if you're the right solution for them, right? They're just going to start working against you
Yep.
in building that trust and confidence. So how will our engagement be funded? Do you already have some budget set aside, or do we need to go find some budget? I'm just asking a question. So when we ask a question and we just say, hey, it's just a question, and it's an honest question. I want to help. I want to understand what we're dealing with. Now, the biggest objection we may find when we're asking for budget in that scenario is probably something like, well, I have no idea how much budget, we should set aside. Can you help me? Right, Jeremy?
Mm.
And so this now becomes a little bit of a fishing expedition. And and you have to rely on your previous experience now in quotes that you've delivered to clients about the same size with about the same needs, right? And then kind of probe for range of budget. Now, when we train sales teams and we do pricing and bundling exercises with our clients, we like the good, better, best, structure where the good offer is your minimum requirement that a client has to sign up for to become a client of yours. So it's got your minimum cybersecurity requirements, your minimum IT services, what the environment needs to look like, et cetera. And that's the minimum, and that's your lowest cost option. Then you have your better option, and then your best option. And each successively higher tier of services brings more value, more perceived value, right? And a higher ticket price. So when a client says, "Hey, I have no idea what kind of a budget do you think we should set aside, or we need to find?" What you can say is something like this, Jeremy. Well, for clients in your size with your needs, we typically find a budget need, and I never say price or cost. Don't use those, are bad words. Those are sales profanity words. Use the word budget, right? Business owners understand budget. If we don't have the budget, we can work to put together the budget, right? Nobody has money just laying around, right? So we typically find a budget requirement of between X and Y. X being, you've done some math in your mind, you know how many users there are and what you typically charge for that, right? That's your good price, and Y being your highest price. So you could say, hey, between $1,500 to $3,500 per month with maybe some upfront costs. Can you find some budget? And I like using the word find, right? Can you find
Yeah.
some budget within that range? And I like using the word find, Jeremy, because it makes, forces the buyer to think outside the box a little bit. Of course, they don't have that just in their back pocket, right? But hey, can we, borrow some budget from over here? Can we do this? Can we move things around to try to find the budget? And if I've done a really good job qualifying and build that sense of urgency, they're going to be pretty motivated to try to find budget. So if I say, do you think we can find some budget within that range? And you say yes to me, Jeremy, my immediate follow-on question is, well, would you say that budget range would be more to the higher range of the budget or not, right? Because I'm trying to now figure out, are you a good, better, or best prospect for me? And if you say to me, hey, no, probably in the middle, that I know, okay, great. I can budget with my better package, and I've now qualified for budget. So then I'll say to you, okay, Jeremy, if let us do our assessment. And once we're done, if we can put together a program that addresses all these needs and fits within this budget range that you've just expressed, would you be willing to move forward to take care of these, pressing issues, right? Again, I want to remind you of the worst thing that can happen. And that's kind of how we navigate that conversation. So that's the end of that meeting, right? We've qualified all the way from pain, need, urgency to budget range. And now I know whether or not you are a prospect for me or not. You could just as easily say to me, well, yeah, no, there's no way we could, even put together, even at the low end of that budget. And at that point, you've got to appreciate that client for taking their time and know that, it's not a fit, because obviously we need three things. We need three things to start a relationship, right? We need a pain or a need, we need a solution, and we need budget. 2 out of 3 isn't gonna achieve that. So we've got to let them try to find another solution, because we simply can't help them at that point.
Absolutely. And for the MSP, I think it's, more worth their time to look for other clients, right, who do fit that budget and the need and the solution, than to keep trying to, make the sale go through. So you mentioned early in your sales process that, you ask the questions, you sort of highlight, the areas that need attention or need addressing that they're not able to address, or maybe they don't know how to address. And then you go in and you say, okay, with your permission, we'll run an assessment. I've been talking to a bunch of MSPs lately, and the common thread that I'm finding is risk assessments, vulnerability assessments, seems to be a crucial part of everybody's sales process. And then, we do risk assessments.
Yes, of
And we
course.
automate them too. I'm curious just to hear from you, right? The coach, and what you've seen talking to and working with a bunch of different MSPs, not just owning your own MSP. How does risk assessments play a role, and what's, and there's a lot of different risk assessments out there and different ways to pursue risk assessments. Do you have any advice on how to do it right, I guess? Right? Yeah.
So yes, risk assessments are a critical component of scoping a solution. I mean, we need to know what we're dealing with, right? So we need to understand what the current posture is of the organization in order for us to, uh, you know, present to the client what the ideal outcome needs to look like, and then build a plan to get them there over time. And I recommend charging for those risk assessments. I have
Mm.
partners that are amazing at charging for the risk assessment. Everything has a cost, and you're going to find clients that will absolutely not want to pay for a risk assessment, and you're going to find clients that understand the need to assess what's going on. Kind of like going to the doctor, right? We're not just going to prescribe, a drug that might kill you by accident. We're going to give you a full physical, and we're going to, look at your chart, and we're going to analyze everything to put you on the best course for improvement. Um, but if you can get the client to agree to pay for it, and then there's a couple of different techniques in doing this. There's one camp, Jeremy, that says, well, we'll charge them, but if they subscribe to our services, then we'll credit them that back. I'm not a fan of that approach, right? Because again, you're at some point you are devaluing the perception of your services, right?
Yep.
So it's got to be reasonable, right? So depending upon the severity of the situation, like if a client is ransomed right now, they are highly motivated to
Oh
pay
yeah.
anything you ask to help them, right?
Yep.
And I'm not suggesting we take advantage of them. That's not what I'm saying at all. But take that same mindset and say, well, at the end of the day, we have to be profitable in order to support these clients moving forward. And if we're giving away our services before we've even closed an opportunity, we've already eroded the margin of any future services we're already delivering to them.
Also,
So,
it
mhm,
takes this revenue to fund your own MSP so you can provide the most professional and best service, right? You use the best tools and put in all the labor, right? And do all the due diligence, yeah, to
right,
provide that service, yeah.
exactly. So I'm gonna offer the solution, right? And it's the best of both worlds. And this is what we charge for an assessment. And if you agree to allow us to, remediate and enter into an engagement with us, what we'll do is we'll defray that investment over the first 12 months of the agreement or something
Mm.
like that. You're not giving it away, but you're saying, hey, we've got skin in the game. We want you to put some skin in the game. And together, if it makes sense, then we will credit that or we will defray the cost. I'm not saying credit. I'm saying we will add that over. Let's say it's, you charge them $10,000, right, for the assessment. We will defray that over a 12-month period in addition to whatever the service is, right? So it gets the client to understand that, hey, this is something that they need. We're willing to work with you, right? And as much as I dislike being the bank for clients, this is a way not to be the sales prevention unit, right? And put a big
Mm.
sticker price, before we even get to move forward. So that's the way I look at these opportunities now, and it kind of dovetails back into the conversation of how often are we raising our rates on a regular basis? How 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 wide is the gap of your lowest paying client to the new client you're signing next week? And what does that gap look like? And will you ever be able to true them up fast enough to get to that profit margin, right? As we build our businesses, we grow in our operational maturity and we start understanding much more clearly, you know, the the importance of making that profit margin for all the reasons we've already been talking about today, Jeremy. But boy, oh boy, I do a pretty controversial session where I talk about, hey, it's time to fire some customers and all the reasons why we need to fire customers. Because to, if for nothing else, to stop bleeding profit, but also to make room for higher profit clients. The MSPs are always saying, yeah, I need to hire more techs. I need to hire more techs. Well,
Mm.
how many bad customers are you supporting? Right. Going back to, my own personal experience, getting rid of a bunch of C customers and finding out, holy cow, we're more profitable than we were before by
Yeah.
before, right? So these are the things that we think about, once we kind of build a process for growth in our companies where we've solved, our solution stack. We've got a good marketing strategy. Our sales process is pretty consistent. I'll take consistency
Yep.
over perfection, right? What we don't want is the peaks and valleys of, closed sales and lost sales, closed sales, lost sales. We want a very steady progression of improved closed sales over time. And one way we do that is to stop chasing deals that will never close, these
Mm-hmm.
unqualified deals, these deals that just don't make sense, these deals where the client doesn't have budget or we're not qualifying for budget and we're spending all this time on a deal that we're never going to be able to close because it doesn't have those three components: pain, solution, and budget.
I think that's a real lesson and a tough lesson sometimes for folks to learn. I know I had to learn it myself. Um, but rather than trying to sell everybody, going slow and steady and focusing on your real customers and your A customers and customers who trust you, who are going to be there for you long term, and spending more time supporting them so that you foster that relationship and you build more customers like that, and they end up paying you more over time as well. They also end up referring you. They become your champion. I think there's a lot of benefits to what you just said. I'd
Yeah.
love to, as we head to the end of our podcast here, I'd love to go back in time and just learn a little bit more about your personal journey. You mentioned that you started your own break fix IT company. It was how you got started into the industry. Gosh, 26 years, Intel, Cisco, Microsoft, CompTIA, Kaseya, and all these businesses, MSP University and Channel Mastered, and all of these companies. I'm curious. Two things actually. What was your origin story that got you into your first business, your original business? And looking back at the 26 years, what was your most important learning?
Mm, yeah, those two great questions. So what got me started? It's interesting. If I think back on how worried I was when I was in school. I didn't have a lot of opportunity, in my backstory, and I was always concerned. I was seeing the computer industry kind of like taking off, and I thought, man, I'm going to be left behind if I don't start moving in that direction. Well, life didn't work out for me like I would have liked, and I ended up I was on my own since I was 16 years old. So I basically was on my own, living on my own, trying to find my way in the world at 16. And I just happened to fall into different opportunities in my younger years that kind of fostered this entrepreneurial spirit within me. Like I wanted to be, I wanted to dictate my own destiny. I did work for people. I had jobs and things like that, and I learned very, very quickly, how badly, one poor manager or leader could negatively impact my career and my life. And
Yeah.
after a couple of bad scenarios, I said, you know what, I'm not going to work for anybody anymore. And I started trying to all these different entrepreneurial things. I ended up, at a large Fortune 500 um, IT company and started at the help desk and kind of worked my way up all the way up to CIO, CTO level in a very short few years, but then experienced the same thing in the enterprise where, you can only get as far as, the leadership above you and their vision and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And that's when I decided to exit. And that's my engineering background where before I finally exited, we were building out call centers and service desks and things like that. And that's how I learned ITIL and incident management and project management. We did multi-million dollar projects. And so I had that in my DNA now, and I said, let me go out and start my own practice. And so that's kind of what propelled me to, again, just kind of the cards that I was dealt, saying, well, I'm not going to get any further here. And I really don't want to start over somewhere else in the enterprise. I'd rather go back to that entrepreneurial spirit, that wellspring of, let me chart my own course. And that's when I started the IT practice, and then, the story continued from there. The biggest learning that I now appreciate over time, I'll share two. Number one, and I say this firmly, tongue in cheek, right? I was the people hating engineer, right? I was the people hating engineer, Jeremy, where look, you'd come into my office and you'd be talking to the back of my head as I had my head buried in my monitors. And then, after you get tired and take a breath, I'd say something to you like, okay, sounds good. Send me an email and I'll take care of it. Right. I was not a people person. So the first most important is I started working on myself, started working on my leadership, started working on being more of a people person, understanding and really confirming in my mind that it is true. It's who you know. It's who you know that helps you. And if you
Mm,
don't have good relationships with the people that can help you, then you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle. So work on yourself, be more of a people person, force yourself out of your box, work on it every day, improve, work on your leadership and all that stuff. Second thing that I learned over time, and this again comes from my engineering wiring, is learning to let go, learning to
mm,
let go, and delegating and trust and knowing, because I was always the person that thought, you know what, I can do it faster, I'll do it better, they're going to screw it up. So I'm going to do it. And I was always the bottleneck because of that, right? So progress over perfection, right? It doesn't have to be
wow.
perfect, but we need to be moving forward. And so that one is one that I still struggle with both of these today, right? Still struggle to be a good leader, still struggle to delegate more and let go, because that means that you have to now, instead of spending time doing the thing and being the bottleneck, you have to spend time now coaching and leading others and training them and trusting them, and then helping pick them up when they fail and being okay with that. And that is hard for, an engineer like me, is to be okay with a probability that something's going to get screwed up, but always being there to not let it get too sideways. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, don't let it affect a client relationship. Don't do this, but give others opportunity, and then build others below you doing the same thing with the rest of their teams. So those are the two.
Wow. Um, I mean, I highly, highly relate to everything you just said. I mean, I felt, I was the same way, right? When I was in school and just coming out of school. Um, I'm curious, the last part about, trying to do everything yourself and then becoming the bottleneck, progress over perfection. Just how were you able to achieve that? Was it sort of over a long amount of time that you practiced and trained this, or was it something clicked? Um, yeah, how?
Uh, necessity. I think
Mm,
you wake up and you go, man, what is this hamster wheel I seem to be in all the time? And what and looking and being honest with yourself and saying, okay, it's not them, it's me.
mm,
I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I
yep,
need to change the way I behave. If I and realizing that that's the only thing that you can change is you and your behavior. It's very hard to get someone to change their behavior. It can be done, but you have to, that's a whole leadership journey, right? A book that I love to recommend is The Five Levels of Leadership. That teaches you, first the different levels of leadership, and how to work on yourself and how to build other leaders below you. But you've got to be honest with yourself, and then you have to hold yourself accountable to consistently work on yourself. And it's challenging, Jeremy. I mean, it's not a
yeah,
cakewalk, right? I mean, because everybody has their great days and everybody has their down days. And we go through these emotional journeys, and things happen personally to us that cause us to, react emotionally.
yep.
The
That doesn't
good,
get talked about enough. It's not just about the business or the tech. No, we're people
we
too.
are people. Yeah. And it's, and sometimes, it gets to us. I mean,
Yep.
I know for me, during like the middle of COVID, I went through
Yeah.
a period, like a dark time for like 6 weeks. Like I was, like I had lost my bearing. Everything had just,
Same.
and there were a lot of personal things, here that we were dealing with in the family and things like that, right? So you're like, wow, I've never experienced something like that. And, I think the guidance there is to, okay, experience that emotion, but set a time or a date that says, okay, I'm going to give myself this much time, and then, I got to shake this off. We've got to keep going. And knowing that when you're building a team of people that are relying on you, and in our organizations, I mean, we're all very, very closely knit, right? We're all like, we feed off of each other, right? And to understand the impact that you may have subconsciously on other people because you're kind of
Mm.
not responding to email, or you're not,
Wow.
your same sense of self, of activity or energy and things like that.
Yep.
And you've got to bring that for your team. You've got to bring that for your family and friends. You've got to bring it for your clients, right? And all these other relationships. And it can be a heavy burden, right? But I guess the way I look at it as the alternative is unacceptable, right? Why wallow, right? And just kind of spin your wheels. If you start taking the journey of helping build the team and build leaders, and be transparent with them and honest with them, they're the ones that are going to help pull you out of those times.
Yes.
I'm constantly surprised that,
Yes.
wow, wow, that person or that team, look what they did. Like, I recently came down with COVID. I was down for like over a week, and the team was just killing it. And I thought, oh
Wow.
my goodness, that's amazing. And so that, celebrate that with your team, and express that and share that, and you got to be vulnerable with your team. They've got to know that you care about them, just like your clients and your family and all this. But like, when we're talking about business now, it's like the most important thing that your team needs from you is to know that you care. And I'm the kind of person that I won't ask one of my team members to do something that I wouldn't do either, right? And they've seen me do it, and we know that we're all in the trenches together. So I like that kind of I like that environment for a team. I'm a big team person.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Eric. On that note, last question: who should reach out to you, and what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach me at Erick at channelmastered.com. That's ERICK at channelmastered.com. And if you're looking to build or improve your MSP practice, give me a shout out. If you're a vendor that's looking to improve your channel program, or recruit more MSPs, or enable your existing channel partners, I'd love to talk to you.
I'm going to talk to you because we are that vendor. And
Excellent.
if you're an MSP and you want to win new clients and help your existing clients be compliant, get your free automated risk assessments today at telivy.com, Telivy.com. Links in the description, including Eric's contact info as well. And a special promotion for podcast listeners: if you like Telivy and want to run automated risk assessments for more clients, more endpoints, let us know you came from the podcast. We'll give you 20% off the upgrade. Thank you so much, Eric. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your journey, your experience, and also sharing your uh, human side. And I think a lot of us can relate to it. A lot of us can learn from it for sure. I definitely learned a lot from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Well, I'll see y'all next time.